In this lecture, we're going to create a class for handling the player's movement. We must create something called an event handler to receive the input from the controller. This begs the question, what's an event handler? To understand event handlers, we must discuss the idea of events. In the real world, we have events for all kinds of things. Birthdays, weddings, doctor appointments, and graduations can be considered events. During these events, we may behave differently than on a regular day. We may dress up or go out to eat as a celebration. Events in programs are similar. However, they're not as exciting. In some cases, we may not be interested in executing code immediately. Instead, we may want to wait for an event to occur before doing anything else. Events can be created from anything. For example, we may want to move the player when a button is pressed. Another example would be when the player is defeated. This leads us to event handlers. An event handler is a method responsible for performing logic during an event. There are two steps to dealing with events. First, we must create an event. Second, we must create an event handler. Luckily, by using the input system, events are created from our actions. We can skip this step entirely. Some of you want to create custom events. Don't worry, I got you covered. In a future section, custom events will be discussed. For now, let's let Unity handle event creation. The first step is to create a script. As always, we should dedicate a directory to our scripts. In the Assets directory, create a new folder called Scripts. Inside this folder, create a new C# script. The name of the file should be called Movement. Next, let's modify the script by double-clicking on it. This should open Visual Studio Code. Before moving on, make sure the class name matches the name of the file. If you rename the file after creating it, these names might not match. It's a common problem among students. It's always good practice to set the name while the file is being created. After confirming the names match, let's clean up our script. First, we're going to remove the inner contents of the movement class. We do not need the start or update methods. Next, at the top of the file, remove the using statements for the system namespace. Our editors can inform us when a namespace is not utilized from within a file. If the statements have darker shading than the rest of the file, this indicates that the namespaces can be safely removed. Great! The last step is to create a namespace. Above the class, create a namespace called rpg.character. For the rest of this course, we're going to be using the RPG namespace for all classes. Classes related to characters will be placed in the character namespace. Let's move the class inside the namespace. Our class is ready. Inside the class, define a method called handleMove. This method should have a return type of void. In addition, the accessibility should be public. Going forward, all methods should have a return type of void unless stated otherwise. As for accessibility, I'll let you know if a method should be public or private. In most cases, event handlers should be public. Events are primarily written from an external location. Therefore, the event handler may not be accessible if the event gets triggered. The name of the method is important to highlight. Event handlers should be easily identifiable. Throughout the course, we're going to be creating dozens of event handlers. We should be consistent with our naming. The name of the event handler should start with the word handle. This word should be followed by the name of the event. For example, if we had an event called click, the event handler's name should be called handleClick. These names are not mandatory. You can come up with any naming system you would like. Above all else, you should be consistent. Inside our method, let's print a message to the console. Call the print method with the following message: WASD keys pressed. To keep it simple, we're printing a message to the console. This will help us verify the method gets called during a key press. After ascertaining our method works, we'll replace the code with code for moving the player. We're almost finished. The method is ready. The next step is to add this script to the player. By doing so, the class will have access to the player's info. This includes their position. Therefore, this method will be able to move the player from their current position. Switch over to Unity. In the project window, search for the player prefab. Once you find it, enter prefab edit mode. From the hierarchy, select the parent object. After doing so, add a new component. You should be able to find the movement component. Add it to the game object. Awesome! We've successfully created an event handler. It's been attached to the player. The next step is to inform Unity of our event handler. At the moment, Unity does not assume which events and event handlers are connected. We must manually create this connection. In the next lecture, we'll handle this step.